let's not. Not right now.
Next, we go to the trial court of Washtenaw County in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a hearing. The defendant, Donald Roberts, is charged with unarmed robbery, refusal to provide fingerprints, assault with intent to rob, and larceny. Roberts had been representing himself in the case, but the man next to him is attorney John Vella. Vella was appointed by the judge to be Roberts' standby counsel. Roberts had just informed the court about the poor quality of the state law library in prison and claimed he didn't need a lawyer. Assistant Prosecutor for Washtenaw County, Brenda Taylor, responds.
Your Honor, I'm asking the court to use the report dated July 25th of Dr. Smith for purposes of finding incompetency, and I'm asking the court to find the defendant incompetent and to order him to the Forensic Center for treatment and restoring of competency. I have prepared a proposed order. I don't want to reiterate the other issues that have already brought us here. If the court wants me to respond regarding the law library, I can.
No, I've already ruled on that.
While his competence is still in question, Roberts has a question for the court.
What about my discovery? Let's talk about that.
Oh, let's not. Not right now.
Robert becomes agitated and, off camera, attempts to lift and topple the podium as Judge Schwartz observes. He advances towards attorney John Vella before being quickly restrained by the officers. The officers intervene as this woman carefully finds an exit, walking through a row of chairs towards safety. There's the case of Shondell Jackson. Shondell Jackson, who is facing charges for murder in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In 2010, a 19-year-old named Shondell Jackson attempted to rob Nathan Potter, a 21-year-old student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, who was returning to his apartment. Unfortunately for them, Potter wasn't carrying any cash. Instead of just walking away and chalking it up as a failed robbery, Jackson shot Potter, tragically ending his young life. Now, you'd expect someone convicted of first-degree intentional homicide and a robbery to feel some iota of remorse, right? Well, not Jackson. Throughout the trial, he showed zero remorse and even had the audacity to smirk at Potter's family. Smirking in the face of such a heart-wrenching tragedy is enough to make your blood boil.
And us swearing at us and smiling.
Nathan's father gave a very emotional victim impact statement during the trial. He asked for the maximum sentence and called Jackson's crimes pure evil.
Nothing that can be said to bring back our Nathan. But your sentence can ensure that Shondell does not have the opportunity as a free man to inflict pain like this again.
Things took a wild turn when the judge finally dropped the hammer and sentenced Jackson to life in prison with no chance of parole. Jackson's anger boiled over, and he unleashed a storm of curses at the judge and court officers. The scene quickly descended into chaos as court officers had to jump in, tackling Jackson and even resorting to pepper spraying him to bring him under control. But the madness didn't end there. Sitting in the back of the courtroom, Jackson's family couldn't resist chiming in. They decided to insult Potter's mother, spewing hatred as if she was responsible for Jackson's heinous crime and sentence. The behavior was very puzzling, both for the victim's family and onlookers.
There is some redemption for him at some point, but that's totally up to him. And for his family to say to us, "We hate you," what's that all about? We didn't do a thing to him.
Shondell Jackson didn't seem to think that his crimes required life imprisonment, which led to the outburst. However, he wasn't the only convict who thought they deserved lesser sentences. There was Manson Bryant, who was facing charges for multiple crimes, including robbery and abduction in Ohio.
Determines that you have or will have the ability to pay restitution.
A familiar face in Judge Lucci's courtroom, Bryant, at 32 years old, has quite the rap sheet dating back to his juvenile days. He's been in and out of prison multiple times, with at least 8 of his cases landing on Judge Lucci's desk.
Verdict was guilty in count 1, aggravated burglary, felony 1. Guilty in count 2, aggravated burglary, felony 1. Guilty in count 3, aggravated robbery, felony 1. Guilty in count 4, felony 1. Guilty in count 5, abduction, felony 3. And guilty in count 7, which I renumbered for the jury as count 6.
If you think his crimes were bad, brace yourself for his behavior in court. Bryant's day of reckoning arrived as he stood before Judge Lucci for his sentencing. Initially, Bryant appeared to accept his fate, admitting to a lifetime of bad decisions and expressing respect for the judge's decision.
I made a lifetime of bad decisions.
When Judge Lucci handed down a 22-year sentence, Bryant's true colors poured out in a profanity-laced tirade that echoed through the courtroom. He unleashed a barrage of expletives, accusing the judge of racism and disrespecting his courtroom. But here's where things took an unexpected turn.
Ability to pay restitution.
Fuck your courtroom, you racist ass bitch! Fuck your courtroom, man! You racist as fuck!
Judge Lucci initially considered Bryant's remorse and attempted to be fair, but he changed his mind due to the outburst. Watch as Judge Lucci tries to get his words out between Manson's outburst.
Wait a minute.
Never gave me a chance! You
When I
always
said
did
that you had a certain amount of remorse, I was mistaken. So it's 28 years with credit for 231 days.
I don't want to hear it, man!
Judge Lucci initially considered Bryant's remorse and attempted to be fair, but he changed his mind due to the outburst. Watch as Judge Lucci tries to get his words out between Manson's outburst.
I don't want to hear it, man! Let me out! Let me out!
About 3 minutes after the incident, Judge Lucci can be heard laughing about the moments that just transpired.
He seemed so calm and cool and civil until the sentence.
According to Judge Lucci, this wasn't the first time Bryant had shown such disrespect. Eventually, the additional 6 years were struck out by a superior court. It wasn't on the record.
Wasn't on the record, but the last time, as he was walking out of the court, he said, "Suck my dick, Judge."
Dexter Johnson, who was facing charges for murder in Houston. This tragic story began when Johnson and 4 others carjacked Maria Aparici and her boyfriend in 2006. The gang held the couple at gunpoint, took their belongings, and then drove them around Houston. Johnson and his accomplice, Keithran Fields, subjected them to a nightmarish ordeal of torture and humiliation. Police reported that Maria Aparici and her boyfriend were shot in the head and left in the woods. It took 5 days before their bodies were discovered. Now, in a Harris County courtroom, 19-year-old Dexter Johnson faced his punishment for the crimes he committed. Though Dexter admitted his role in the crime, he was persistent in his defense, claiming that he was not the shooter. Throughout the trial, Johnson remained stone-faced, his eyes fixed on the defense table. But a wave of emotions overwhelmed him when the decision was finally announced, the death penalty. Tears streamed down his face as he looked towards his family, wanting to give them one last wave goodbye. He appeared confused and unsure of what to do next.
Capital murder. In accordance with the laws of the state of Texas, this court hereby assesses your punishment of death.
And then it happened in an instant. Johnson's rage consumed him, and he hurled a chair across the room. Chaos erupted as officers swiftly tackled him, and the courtroom descended into panic. The scene was heart-wrenching as Johnson's relatives wailed and begged for mercy. 2 of his family members collapsed, requiring immediate medical attention. It was an overwhelming display of raw emotions.
But the mayhem spills out into the hallway.
Amidst the turmoil, the presiding judge, Denise Collins, reached out to console those affected by this dramatic episode. She offered kind words and support to the parents of Maria Aparici, the woman whom Johnson robbed, sexually assaulted, and killed. It was a moment of solace amid chaos. Emotion was a constant presence in this case. Johnson's mother, Renee Johnson, passionately defended her son, declaring his innocence and putting her faith in divine intervention. Portacio Aparici Jr., The grieving father of Maria Parisi expressed his pain and spoke of the violence inflicted upon his daughter. In a way, it could be said that Johnson got what he deserved, and his outburst was understandable. However, there are other convicts whose punishment seemed lenient and their outbursts confusing, such as the case of Eric Pendland. Eric Pendland, who is facing child endangerment charges in Ohio. Pendland was convicted of violently shaking the child, causing permanent disabilities.
Eric Pendland was charged with shaking his then-infant son so violently 2 years ago, the boy is now blind and permanently disabled. I was there as the verdict was read in a courtroom full of emotion.
The abuse occurred when the child was just 3 months old. Sharon Lawson and her husband, who have been dedicated foster parents to disabled and abused children, began caring for Pendland's baby boy in 2017. The now 2-year-old victim was formally adopted by the Lawsons a few weeks before the sentencing and has since relocated out of the area.
Eric will rely on others to bathe him, dress him, change his diapers, feed him.
The lifelong consequences of Pendland's actions are devastating and irreversible. Sharon Lawson also expressed the unimaginable agony they endured while caring for the baby. The child's relentless screaming, which lasted for hours on end, left them completely unprepared for the severity of the abuse.
Nothing prepared us for the screaming. Hours and hours of screaming.
It was a very disturbing case indeed. Nevertheless, Pendland insisted that he was innocent.
I've been falsely accused. I've been wrongfully convicted.
If you think that Pendland would be remorseful that his actions were horrible, you'll be shocked by his behavior in court. Throughout the entire legal process, Pendland showed no remorse. Prosecutors also highlighted Pendland's prior criminal record, including robbery convictions and a federal firearms charge due to his previous offenses. Mandatory prison time was inevitable in this case, and the prosecution requested the maximum sentence.
Submit to the court that this entire record is absolutely devoid of any remorse by the defendant.
And the maximum sentence he got, Pendland was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Prosecutors emphasized that Pendland wasn't facing more severe charges because the baby had miraculously survived his injuries. After Pendland heard that he would spend the next decade in prison, he displayed his frustration and disbelief by bowing his head, shaking it, and finally unleashing an outburst of profanity, proclaiming his innocence. Judge Tracy Hunter, the person on trial like in the case of Tracy.
Man. I didn't do anything wrong, man.
As an ex-judge, Hunter has had a huge fall from grace, and she now finds herself before Judge Patrick Dinklocker at Hamilton County Common Pleas Court in Cincinnati. Hunter was originally convicted of charges relating to abuse of power after she leaked confidential documents to her brother so that he could keep his job as a corrections officer. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, but with her in-depth knowledge of the legal system, Hunter dragged the appeals process out for an incredible 6 years, managing to stay free as she pursued her case through the court. However, she has now exhausted all avenues of appeal, and today she is in court to hear whether the 6-month sentence will be imposed or not. Unlike most defendants, Hunter has something of a cult following, with many reporters believing her conviction to be politically motivated. With crowds of allies gathered inside and outside the court, tensions are running high. Hunter's luck has run out as Judge Dinklocker orders that she serve the entire sentence, and it sets in motion an extraordinary chain of events. As the former judge stands, a collective outcry rises from the gallery, and her supporters begin to shout in protest.
You pay the cost of these proceedings. Number 2, you are to do not violate any laws. Number 3, you are to do 6 months in the Hamilton County Justice Center. Credit 1 day. Mr. or Ms. Deputy can take her away.
The deputies standing in the center aisle turn to the left, raising their arms to try to calm the crowd. However, as they do so, a woman on the right-hand side of the gallery sees her opportunity and stands, rushing toward Hunter without interruption. As she nears her destination, the deputy closest to the podium sprints and frantically moves to stop her. The rising tension suddenly boils over, and as one of the deputies moves to lead Hunter from the courtroom, she begins to struggle before going limp. By now, the gallery is in uproar, and supporters cry "No justice" as the judge-turned-felon is dragged unceremoniously from the courtroom. The woman who attempted to approach Hunter is handcuffed and led out of the court by officers. The remainder of Hunter's supporters are still incensed as they exit the courtroom, and as a result, they rally outside the court building, chanting and marching. Hunter eventually serves just 3 months of her sentence before being released. Hunter's support came from the public, and though the courtroom drama was out of line, the ultimate intention was morally upstanding. But as we see in the next video, this isn't always the case. At the Moran County Judicial Center in Florida, Travis Davis has just been found guilty of first-degree murder, along with co-defendants Brandon Banks, Kelvin Grimmage, and Kella Richardson. The 4 men are facing life in prison for shooting homeowner Courtney London dead during a home robbery in Ocala. Tensions are running high after the delivery of the verdict, and due to the known volatile nature of the defendants, extra deputies have been drafted in to maintain control in the courtroom. As the judge proceeds with the hearing, he asks the prosecutor if they can go ahead with sentencing. Everything seems to be ticking along normally, but unbeknownst to everyone in the courtroom, things are about to take a shocking turn. Watch Davis closely just before the judge delivers the sentences. A deputy behind Davis grabs his hand in an attempt to cuff him. Davis is having none of it, and he quickly yanks his hand away, sensing the danger. The deputy immediately reacts, wrapping his arms around Davis from behind, and that's when things really start to kick off. A second deputy rushes over towards Grimmage to cuff him, but as he leans across the table, Grimmage pulls back. Davis uses his body weight to throw himself down on the table in front of him, and Grimmage joins in on the action, grappling with the deputy as he throws punches before being dragged to the ground. Meanwhile, Davis is also wrestled to the ground, but manages to get back up, swinging his fists wildly as he lashes out at the deputies. The public in the gallery is up in arms, and a deputy orders them out. However, a number of them are reluctant to. The room is eventually cleared, and the deputies regain control. Before they are brought out in cuffs, Davis expresses his love for his ally. Although they ultimately face no charges in relation to the brawl, all 4 defendants are sentenced to life without parole for the murder. In cases like this, the chaos ultimately has no bearing on the verdict or sentence. Ricky Hand faced charges of aggravated robbery, attempted safecracking, abduction, and breaking and entering.
Maybe 40 years.
Sir Ricky had been on a robbing spree for years, and he was likely becoming confident in his ability. However, his romance with robbing quickly turned sour the night he attempted to rob Jones' drive-thru in Springfield, Ohio. In the footage, we can see the shop owner starting to close down for the night. Ricky, with other plans in mind, makes his way to the door. Upon reaching it, he is greeted by the armed owner, who begins firing to scare Ricky off. The owner then called the police to inform them that there had just been an attempted robbery at the shop, resulting in a man getting shot.
Yeah, this is John's drive-thru, West Main Street. A guy just tried to rob me and I shot him. He ran out the back door.
Okay, is he injured?
I think I hit him.
"I think I hit him." Well, as it turns out, he did indeed hit him, because only 2 days later, a man admitted himself to the nearby hospital to treat bullet wounds. It didn't take long for the police to piece together that this was most likely the robber they were looking for. Arrests were made at the hospital, and Ricky was questioned that night.
Tried to rob John's drive-thru. Got shot 3 times. I did the crime, I ain't gonna lie. I just wanted to live.
He thought the crimes were horrendous enough. Wait until you see how Ricky reacted after being sentenced. As the judge drops the bombshell and hands Ricky a 40-year sentence, the man's mind seems to short-circuit. As if to confirm what he heard, he asked the judge if that was his sentence.
Did you just give me 40 years? Sir? Yes.
Nobody expected that Ricky had a surprise up his sleeve, or rather in his arm sling. Had hidden pill bottles filled with his own feces and urine right under his arm the whole time. In the blink of an eye, Ricky whips out those bottles of nastiness and throws them at his defense lawyer. The lawyer got a taste of some foul-smelling justice, and the courtroom went into complete chaos. I guess Ricky wanted to make sure he left a lasting impression in that courtroom. Did he succeed?
You just gave me 40 years. Well, guess what? So,
Unlike in comedy movies, Ricky's actions have real-life consequences. Ricky is now facing additional charges. That's right, 5 counts of harassment with bodily substances. 1 count for his lawyer and the other 4 for the poor deputies who got caught in the crossfire.